All right, RyanF9, you were on Driven to Ride. Thank you. It's an honor to have you on the show, sir.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, I was just watching your latest video over lunch, trying to setting the mood. It was about a part that took 2 years to make, which is insane.
Yes, yeah. Bosch ABS units take a couple years to calibrate. Thanks very much for watching it. If you watched it, you put like, I don't know, 7/100ths of a penny in my pocket or something like that. So I appreciate that, especially because that one was so much fun to make. Like to get to ride on proving grounds, on the low friction surfaces. That one was like basalt tiles that they flood with water to create a mu coefficient similar to snow, so very slippery. And then they put the outriggers on the bike so you can crash 10, 20, 30 times in a row with no consequences. I mean, that's a playground. It was an absolute treat to get to film that. So yeah, to hear that you watched it and you enjoyed it, that's highly appreciated, because those videos are always the most enjoyable for me to make.
Yeah, and it only went over my head maybe 3 times, I think.
Right on. I realized in hindsight, actually, that I don't think I did a good enough job explaining some of the principles in that one. I think some videos you get too far into it, and you immerse yourself in the content. You're talking with the engineers about, okay, this is the slip ratio, and we're going to kind of keep it around this percent, and then we're going to ramp it linearly, like up to 15% at this point. And you're so in depth in that world that all these things you just start to take for granted. And and I wrote the script and we shot the video, and I thought it was good and it all made sense. We put it out, and immediately I noticed a few of the comments were like, "What is a slip ratio?" And things like this. And I was like, "Crap, yeah, that is a principle that ought to be explained before you just start using it in a piece of camera." So anyway, all that to say, I think you're in very good company there. I think if we were to do that one again, that we'd probably explain a few of those things a little bit better.
No, that's okay. I mean, I always appreciate it. It gives you something to learn and there's always something to learn in motorcycling. So it's kind of just another example of that.
There is, and there's always Google. Like I'm not above just using terminology in videos that I know that some people won't be familiar with, because I know that one tab over they can type it in and just find the answer there. So
true.
Yeah, we don't want to. We don't want to try to cross every T and dot every I, because that gets boring sometimes.
Yeah. Well, I've been a fan of yours for a very long time. I want to say 6-7 years, maybe even longer. Enough to say, who is this like super skinny kid telling me about motorcycles from this random Canadian YouTube channel that I just discovered? I don't even know how I discovered you.
Yeah.
But I've been a big fan for a long time. If somebody has no idea who you are, can you kind of tell me what most people know you for, what your claim to fame is?
Yes. Yeah. I have a YouTube channel called FortNine. We make videos about motorcycles, riding techniques, gear reviews, really anything that a motorcyclist might find entertaining or valuable or educational. We'll try to make a video for that. So as you say, in the early days, I was known as that skinny Canadian kid. Who is this yellow guy talking shit about motorcycle helmets? Yeah, that's where it started. Thank you very much for being a fan in the early days, because back then I think our content was not as palatable as it is now. But the early videos are a much skinnier and younger version of myself, just standing in a room in FortNine's office with 4 or 5 helmets in front of me, saying, "Oh, I like this one, and this one's shit. I wouldn't buy this one, and this one's overpriced, and whatever."
My first impression was this kid's coming out swinging, and I love it.
I'm glad to hear that as well. Fortunately, I worked for a company called FortNine that it was very avant-garde in their approach to content. They're very much like Revzilla, but serving Canada. So they sell helmets and jackets and pants and tires and motorcycle parts. But from day one, they said, go make some content, brand it under FortNine, and make sure that motorcyclists find it useful or entertaining or valuable. And that's it. They never said, try to say nice things about the stuff we sell or try to promote this brand or anything like that. So from day one, I could get whatever gear I wanted from the warehouse. Like we bought all that stuff anyway. So We weren't beholden to anyone. I could try it all out. I could
Yeah.
decide for myself what I thought was worthwhile and a good buy and what I thought was kind of disappointing.
Hmm.
And then I'd try to share that information in video form, and we'd stick it up on YouTube. I think a lot of our earlier success was just based on being lucky enough to be in that position where we had access to all this stuff, but we had no obligations to any of these brands or
Right.
manufacturers, which is rare, right? Like magazines, you can talk about a Shoei helmet, but the next page you're going to have a spread from Shoei. Like that's your income as well. So it's immediately a much more difficult line to walk.
Yeah, it's a
We were
tough
just
balance.
put in a pretty fortunate spot to make honest motorcycle content.
Yeah, and you really cover the gamut, and I think we'll get into that in a little bit. But let's take it back to your day one. How did you even get into motorcycling in the first place?
My father was a motorcyclist. He told me great stories about riding his RD 350 down to California back in the day and seizing the piston because, of course, he would. He would take me on the back of his bike when I was little, so I loved that. Growing up where I did, my backyard was just the mountains. I was fortunate to live in a rural area, so
Mhm.
from the time I was 11, I had dirt bikes, and me and my buddies would just go out and race motocross. I use the term motocross lightly because there was nothing really official about it, but we cut a little track and we had kids
Nice.
on 4 strokes and 2 strokes, and big bikes and little bikes and whatever. And we would go back there and race. So yeah, I got the bug there. And then when I was a little bit older, I was 17, I started work in a BC provincial park and national historic site. So kind of backwoods Canada. There's some remnants of an old train up there.
Cool.
And I was like an employee of the park there to kind of like give people information and greet people. And I was destroying the family car, dragging it up this
Right.
rugged dirt road to get there every day. And so I made the pitch to my mother that we could save the Camry if I just got my motorcycle license and was able to ride a dual sport bike up there instead. And she said, yes, you could get your license, but only if you only use your motorcycle license for work. I said, yes, fair deal. And of course, now I'm still using it for work. So I think I've technically obeyed the rule of my mother there.
I was gonna say, yeah, you've kind of towed the line and stuck with it, so that's pretty cool. In Canada, is it? Tell me what the licensing procedure is like. I mean, is it similar to the U.S. that you've heard, or is it different?
Yeah, I think it's similar. It's at least similar in that it's a bit of a patchwork. Like every province is a little bit different.
Okay.
One of the weirdest stories, I used to live in Quebec, and in Quebec, for a while, it was just a box that you ticked. You would go to get your car license, and there was a box there that said, "Hey, you want a motorcycle
No
license
way.
too?" And people would go, "Sure, why not?" And
Yeah.
just be given it. So it was that way for a long time. And of course, there were millions of motorcycle license holders in Quebec because, given the choice, why wouldn't you take the box? But these
Yeah.
people weren't actually riding; they didn't actually own bikes. They just made the logical choice. So eventually, they introduced a law that said you had to pay a certain amount of money every year to retain this motorcycle license, and immediately
Mm.
the millions surrendered
It dropped off.
their licenses because they weren't riding anyway. But now I live in BC here. I think, like a lot of places, you go and you take a written test. If
Mhm.
you pass that, you can only ride within sight of another motorcyclist who's had a license in good standing for a long time.
Okay.
That lasts for, I think, a year. After that, you do an in the parking lot sort of riding skills test. If you pass that, you can ride on your own, but you have to have zero blood alcohol content, and you can't carry a passenger. You can't ride at night. Certain
Oh
limitations
wow.
like
Okay.
this. And then I think that lasts another year. Then you do an on road test where an instructor follows you for 45 minutes or an hour. It's quite long. And if you pass that, then you have your full license. There's no CC restrictions. The only rule here is that if you take your test on a bike below 400 cc's, then you're limited to bikes below 400 cc's. And if
Oh
you take
wow.
the
Okay.
test on something bigger, then you can ride anything bigger. At least this is the way it was when I did my license. Granted, this information is now more than a decade old, but
Sure.
that's that. The reason people like getting a license in BC, though, compared to other provinces, is that if you have a car license here, then they waive all of the time waiting periods. So you
Oh
have a
okay.
car license in good standing, you could book your written test, your skills test, your road test, bang, 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 and get the whole thing done in 3 weeks if you could book the appointments that quickly. So
Wow.
yeah, it looks a bit like that. I think in the States it's kind of similar, right? There's kind of a parking lot thing and a probationary period, at least in some states, from what I gathered.
Yeah, depending on the state. So I got my motorcycle license at 17. My parents had to, there's the Motorcycle Safety Foundation in the US. I don't know
Yeah.
if they reach Canada, but
Oh, they
they
do.
used to, okay, cool. Yeah. They offer classes at like community college parking lots and stuff. They kind of
Yeah, yeah.
partner, at least around here in Illinois, because they got these big parking lots in the summer that nobody's using.
Sure.
And so I took it was like 3 days. It was Friday night, like classroom, Saturday all day, Sunday all day in practical, and then you would take the written test, then the skills test on Sunday. And if you pass that, you got a little card, take it to the DMV, and they give
Okay.
you the M license, and that's it.
Okay. Yeah. So that's pretty quick. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty. I think a lot of people do it because they want to ride a motorcycle, then they never actually go ride a motorcycle, but they have the M endorsement.
Okay.
So, but that's just in Illinois. That could, again, we got 50 states. It could be completely different in every state. So,
Yeah. I was in Michigan not too long ago and was hanging out with some guys who are motorcyclists. And
mhm.
this rider goes by doing something that looked pretty scary. And they were saying, oh, this guy probably doesn't have a license anyway. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? They were saying that a lot of the riders in that state don't have motorcycle licenses because if you are caught riding without one, the penalty is like nominal. It's like a
Oh,
whatever
really?
$150 fine, and that's it. See you later. And there's no
Jeez.
law that says you can't purchase and register a motorcycle, insure a motorcycle without a
Hmm.
license. It's unrelated. And yeah, that was wild to me because up here for sure, if you go riding around and you don't have a motorcycle license, like they're throwing the whole book at you. Like your bike's getting impounded. They'll take your car license away too. Like you'll be hit with
Oh
all
my
kinds of
God.
fines. Like, yeah, no, it's a big deal here. Like everyone who rides has a license. No one would ever risk doing it the other way. But yeah,
One of the many subtle differences between Canada and America.
for sure. Yeah, for sure. Subtle differences. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We're both like to be very litigious in our own separate ways. So.
Well, going back to being 11 and growing up kind of with a dad who's a motorcyclist, do you
Yeah.
have a specific memory or a moment that you started riding, maybe as to work, that you knew you were hooked and you were going to be like riding for the rest of your life?
Yeah, it was earlier than that. It was more on the uh, 11 years old side when I was riding dirt bikes. Because before that, ever before I got into motorcycles, I was really into mountain biking, and so me
Okay.
and my buddies would just spend hours pedaling up to the spot called Teddy Bear Junction, and that was like the end of the world. It would take us 3 hours to pedal up there, and we'd be pouring in sweat, and it was so much work.
Yeah.
But when you got there were these really cool down trails that were beautiful and exciting, and we'd ride them back to our houses. And I remember the first time I hopped on a dirt bike, kind of got on it and I was riding it and I was figuring out the gears and I was like, okay, I think I've got a handle on this. And I look up and I'm like, oh shit, I'm at Teddy Bear Junction. Like it felt like 2 minutes and I was there,
Yeah,
and
that's
and
awesome.
there was that moment where I was like, wow, the possibilities in this thing. Like you can just go and you can just keep going. You can cover massive distances and compared to cycling or walking, which were the only things I had experience with previously, that was like opening up a whole world. So we ended up touring on those little bikes, like from where we were, we could ride a few towns over in every direction.
Yeah, it opened up
So
your world, man.
yeah, it did for sure.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, because I mean, you do street and off road riding, but and correct me if I'm wrong, but you're more of kind of like a trail riding, off road adventure bike kind of guy, right?
Yeah, I think that's more my background. So I gravitate towards enduro bikes, motocross bikes, dual sports, venture bikes, kind of on the extreme street side of it. Yeah, if I'm riding for pleasure or recreation, then I stay on the dirt side. Having said that, I also don't have a car and commute every day on a bike, so I have a lot of love for like maxi scooters and Vespas. And right now, I've got an '82 Silverwing because the insurance is super cheap and it has all this
Yeah.
luggage. And so I'm into street bikes as well as practical tools. But when I'm riding for fun, I tend to go to the dirt.
I did not know you didn't own a car. That's wild.
Yeah, no, I don't have one.
Fair enough. You don't.
Fortunate to work in an industry where I have lots of bikes around. So
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Well, and the other thing, and again, we'll get to this in a little bit, but you have a lot of esoteric bikes. You don't have like, the ZX10 next to the Scrambler, next to like, you kind of you have a unique taste in motorcycles. It seems like.
Yeah, I think I'm only into the freaks at this point. I've gotten to work around bikes 50, 60 hours a week, every week for the last 10 years. And so at this point, not that the ZX10 is boring or, not that the T7 is boring, but some of the more modern motorcycles I find a bit less interesting now than the old stuff.
Mm-hmm.
40, 50 years ago, bikes were pretty wild. They were rough and tumble. They were weird. There were some really bad ones. There were some really good ones. There's always, I think, a little more interest in little bikes, even in just that they give you problems and things break and you have to fix them all the time. So yeah, for my personal collection, I tend to buy older stuff. Also, they're very cheap. If I can buy a motorcycle for $2 or $3 grand, then I get pretty tempted. I can afford to keep 5 or 6 at once. Whereas to buy a new bike, I'd have to put all that money into just one.
Right.
I would struggle with that.
So how many, you can list them if you want, you don't have to, but how many bikes are in your collection at the moment?
Right now I have 4. Right now I've got 4. I've got a TC90. I've got a Van RV125. I've got an 82 on a Silverwing, which is a GL500. It's that sideways V-twin CX500 motor, which is an awesome motor. It sounds great. It's powerful enough while still just being a tiny little sipper of gasoline, and falls into a really cheap insurance bracket because it's old enough to be collector plated, and it has great color match luggage. Love that bike. And then I've got a TT350 that's super motoed, so it's got a street wheel set and a dirt wheel set. That's sort of my go to Squamish and ride the trails kind of bike, do enduro stuff on it. It's also pretty old, but high performance as well. It was a motocross bike in its day, so it's very light. The engine's reasonably high compression. It's fast, but because it's because it's a certain age. In British Columbia, they used to let you take any bike and put a headlight and blinkers on it, and they'd write you like a VIN and put a sticker on the headstock and say, "Great, you have a street bike now."
Wow.
Which, it's a crazy idea. It's pretty stupid because it's super loud and it's not at all safe in the sense or in the ways that a street bike should be. So they closed that loophole, but the old bikes are grandfathered in, and that's what that TT is. So yeah, those are my 4 right now, but they're always coming and going. I buy and sell stuff for videos. So usually, every year I'll, 1 or 2 or 3 will go out the door, and a few more will come in for some video that I have planned in the future, and then invariably end up liking the bike and keeping it.
Yeah. Well, variety is the spice of life, man. And there's never a shortage of different kinds of motorcycles out there. So I totally feel you.
Yeah, they're dangerous. Yeah, they're dangerous. I look at car guys, and to buy a nice collectible car, you might need like $50,000, $60,000. You might be saving your whole life to get that dream car of yours.
Yeah, for sure.
And with bikes, it's just so dangerous because all these motorcycles that I've thought about and ogled over the years, like they're all just sitting there on marketplace. They're all $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, like really cheap. And because they're small, you can store them all. So there's not really a limit to having 15 of them in the garage if you want to. So yeah, motorcycles are it's a dangerous addiction for sure.
It's a hell of a drug, man. So,
yeah.
Well, going back, you said you've been able to work 50, 60 hours a week with motorcycles for 10 years. That's all been with FortNine then?
Yeah, it's all been with FortNine. I think in October I'll be 10 years there.
Okay.
Right, 2024. Yeah, I think that is right. Yeah, so I started at FortNine. At the time, the company was called Canada's Motorcycle.
Okay.
Same company. They were a distributor and retailer of motorcycle parts and accessories. But they also started to do snowmobile stuff and ATV stuff and dirt bike stuff. And they were looking at selling a bit outside Canada. So Canada's Motorcycle didn't make a ton of sense as a name anymore. So they wanted to rebrand as something that meant nothing, like a name that they could define for themselves. So we came up with FortNine because FortNine doesn't really mean anything. And when we did that, we started a YouTube channel to generate some Google recognition for this brand name that previously had no meaning on the internet. If you just
Right.
switch the website over to this thing overnight, then Google never finds it again and never sends anyone there. So we started the YouTube channel, I think, in 2016. At that time, I've been with the company for 2 years already. And then I've been doing YouTube exclusively ever since. Before that,
Wow.
I was writing ad copy and blog posts and more
Okay.
miscellaneous marketing duties. And I
Nice.
wasn't very good at it. None of them were very successful, actually.
So did you choose to go by RyanF9, or did you was that given to you?
No, no one's ever asked this before.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's a good question. The answer is no, I didn't choose it. My boss, Neil, did. And I hated the idea at the time. He was like, we were just starting doing videos, and he was like, hey, how about like in the start of every video, you say, hey, I'm RyanF9. And I was like, no, I think that's dumb. It's like, I don't want to like morph my name into this like corporate persona. And yeah, at the time, I thought it was just a silly idea. But they just started letting me do videos and
Okay.
getting to write scripts about the things that I love to do, and then getting to go and do the thing when you film it. It was like,
Oh, yeah.
it's like a dream, right? Before that, I was just writing, so this was even better. It was active, and I got to do the stuff that I was scripting. So I felt very fortunate to be doing the job that I was doing, and I didn't want to disappoint my boss. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll call myself RyanF9.
That's the price of admission. Then I'll do it.
That's the price of admission, and I did it. And Michael, the guy who was shooting with me at the time, also thought it was so dumb. And both of us just kind of gritted our teeth and did it for the first 5 or 10 videos. And then after that, it just felt like second nature, and I never thought about it again. And
Yeah.
now I see people sometimes, and they're like, "Oh, hey, you're RyanF9." Like, it just feels like my name now.
Sure am. Well,
Yeah.
if it's any consolation, when I was in the radio world, I was voluntold to do a weekend shift on a rock station, and I like rock music. I grew up on
Yeah.
alternative music and stuff,
Yeah,
but
cool.
they didn't want me to use my real name, like Mark Long.
Okay.
They didn't want me to use that because I was already on another station. So the program director comes up and just, your new name is Baxter, and it's just like, oh my god, are you kidding? Like, so every weekend, yeah, it's Baxter, and it's like
Hey,
people would know,
Baxter.
and they knew me, and they knew I hated it. So
That's
it's like, hey,
hilarious.
Baxter, how's it going, man? And I'm like, so I feel you a little bit on that one, but
Oh,
RyanF9
yeah.
sounds way cooler. So
I like Baxter. I just said yes to that too. If they came and said, "Hey, you're going to be Baxter F9," I said, "Okay, sure, whatever keeps
Yeah.
you doing video, it's fine."
So going back to the beginning of that career a little bit, and I'm going to pull out a trivia nugget that may or may not be true. Did you go to school for physics?
Yeah, it is true, or it's half true.
Okay.
I did a
Okay.
Bachelor of Arts and a Bachelor of Science. So the science side was physics, and the art side was art history.
Really? Art history?
Yeah.
So then how the hell did writing ad copy end up your gig?
I mean, as fellow undergraduates would know, you don't get a job with a Bachelor of Art History nor a Bachelor of Physics. Both of them are completely useless in the professional world. So I got out of McGill and just answered a job ad on Craigslist from this weird Canada's motorcycle company that was looking for a writer. And just got in doing that. It was just the job that was available. I was writing a bit of stuff for magazines while I was in school, doing a bit of freelancing to earn a bit of extra income.
Okay.
So I knew I wanted to be a writer. So it was a good fit. And I had a background riding motorcycles. So I was like, sweet, riding motorcycles together. This, it seems like a bit of a unicorn.
Yeah. Yeah. And look where it's got you.
It's been fun. It's been a good ride. Yeah.
Yeah, man, that's wild. So, so is there a particular video that you've made? Well, first, let me back up. Do you know how many videos you've made? Do you have a count or no?
No, annoyingly, YouTube Analytics gives great numbers on many things, but when you look at your total videos, it'll just say like 300 plus, and it won't give you an exact number. You can kind of scroll through them and it'll keep counting up, but there's no ready-made number there. I know it's somewhere over, it's over 300 for sure. It might be over 400 at this point. Yeah, somewhere in that ballpark.
Okay. Yeah. Is there a particular video in that multiple hundreds that you're particularly proud of, or one that people have given you the most kind of compliments and kudos for?
Ooh, yeah. Two different questions. Compliments and kudos we get a lot for a video we did called How Harley Davidson Killed Itself. We get a lot of kudos for a video we did on Alta, the electric motorcycle company that went bankrupt.
Yeah.
Here,
yeah.
actually, from a lot of my fellow moto journalists and video guys, people who are in the industry often want to talk about that one because it's a story that many of us had heard and wanted to tell. Hear often good feedback on our video on the T7, the Africa Twin, the Desert X. Usually the big adventure bikes tend to do well for us with our audience. So yeah, those are ones that that people like. The ones I like are often different. We just shot a video. I haven't actually titled it yet. By the time this podcast comes out, it'll be released because I think it's going this weekend or next. But it'll be something like how to rip off the dealership faster negotiating tactics or something like this. And this video was born from a conversation I had with a guy who used to own dealerships, and he was like, "Oh, if you want to drive a really hard bargain, like this, and he kind of gave me all this insight for ways to cheat the system and negotiate away all of the profit margin and the over allowance, and how to get more than ACV, like actual cash value for your trade in, and not to introduce the trade in until the end, and all these weird schemes to kind of drive the hardest bargain and sort of skin the dealer for as much as you can." So I thought, oh, this is interesting. We'll make this video. And then I met this guy, Ken, who runs this dealership over on the island called Kenco. And it's like basically in his house. And he's just the nicest guy. And he's been there for the riding community there for like 30 years. And you can go to his dealership and just hang out and talk. And he's never trying to sell you anything. And if you got a problem with your bike, he'll like look at it and just fix it. And if it doesn't take too much time, he's not even going to charge you anything. Like he's just like salt of the earth, like the exact type of motorcycle dealer that you want in every town. And we'd all be happier riders if we all had a Ken nearby rather than the big multi-brand monstrosity dealerships that are the only ones that can survive these days. So I had these two things, and I thought, oh, this would be cool. We'll go and I'll play this like evil alter ego RyanF9 who like goes in and shows you like, here's how to really screw over your local dealer. And it'll be very like logos, very like cold calculating, driving the hard bargain. And we'll take it as kind of a long wonder, and then we'll arrive at Ken and we'll flip the script and it'll become pathos, and we'll just interview with him and just chat with him for 5 or 10 minutes and just show people what this guy's like and what his dealership's like, and how lovely on a human level this guy is. And then do this long pullout and just leave people with that tension. Like not try to say to people, you should drive a hard bargain, or you shouldn't drive a hard bargain, or you should support your local dealer, or you shouldn't, just buy where you get the best deal. I don't want to go into any of that because people can make up their own minds. I just wanted to present people with this cold logos and this warm pathos, one right after the other, that are two awkward things to sit together, and then end the video and just leave people with it. And I just saw a cut of it, and I love it. I think it makes me feel anxious and awkward every time I finish the video. And to me, that's what I was after. So I like stuff like that. Whether or not the audience likes it, who knows? We may put it out and people may say, "Oh, this was awful. I don't like this at all." So be it. But I liked that one a lot.
That'll be an interesting one to see, and the art history major is definitely coming out in that one. Art history,
a little bit. It doesn't rear its head very often. People are often like, "Oh yeah, you do the videos and you study physics." I'm like, "Yeah." The art history doesn't usually get a chance to come out, but few occasions.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the physics thing, one of the things I want to say that I appreciate about your videos is when you use the chalkboard. I don't know if you've done it lately, but I remember usually on there's usually like it made physics accessible.
Yeah, cool.
I'm not like I enjoy science, but I'm not much of a scientific person. It took me a while to understand like the mechanics of motorcycles, and your videos definitely helped. But on top of that, it seems like you're making just motorcycling more accessible just to everybody by not just explaining the physics and showing, kind of peeling back the layers of gear, either figuratively or literally, or showing that you can buy these old motorcycles, or that you can, riding a motorcycle is more accessible and DIY and custom than you think, and you don't need to be flashy. And, you can just put two 30 caliber machine gun ammo cases on the side of a motorcycle and drill some
Yeah.
turn signals on the side of them. And you've got exactly what you need. Does that come from like an intentional place, or is that just a byproduct of being able to do whatever you want? Or is that like part of your personal mission of motorcycling, or is it just kind of happened?
It's intentional. What I really want for people watching our videos is to watch the video and then turn it off and like go do a thing. In my own life, I'm pretty tech averse. I don't use social media. I don't really like to consume a whole lot of content because I think the more that we watch, the less we do generally.
Sure.
So always in our videos, we try to show people like a more accessible way to do something, or a cheaper way to do something, or a really good piece of gear that is affordably priced that they can buy once and never have to think again. Because um, the last thing I want is for people to watch a FortNine video and then spend more time agonizing over the right thing to buy, or watch a FortNine video and then spend more time watching other people having other adventures on motorcycles. Like, we always want the inspiration at the end of our videos to be one that encourages people to go out and either ride their own bike or buy that thing that they need, and then go ride their bike and not worry about shopping anymore. So so it's intentional. We personally like cheap bikes, so we collect cheap bikes. We personally like hacky cheap mods, so that's the cheap mods that we do. And I'm personally interested in the physics of motorcycling, but I try to always make it like as easy to understand as possible, and also always directly related to something that will actually improve your ride. Like,
Mhm.
we could talk about the way that motorcycles stay upright and this imperceptible weave that they have because of the way the rake and trail is. The tire is always recorrecting and pulling it back online. And that's interesting in a kind of intellectual circle jerky way. But the better thing to do would be to explain, like, okay, this is cool. Look at how this works. And because of that, that's why you have to be really loose on the bars to let the bike keep itself upright, or that's why you have to, maybe seek a wider handlebars so you have more counter steering leverage, or whatever. You try to pull it back to something that's going to be directly applicable to people.
Yeah, there's a practical aspect to the theory education.
There should be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's cool. I've always liked that, and what's funny is that, so you kind of have these hack job customizations, cheap bikes, all that kind of stuff. But man, you're like the quality of the videos. I have to imagine you're a fan of Top Gear.
Of course, yeah, I love Top Gear. There's more than a little Top Gear in the way that I present, because I just grew up watching Clarkson and May and Hammond, and that's just,
Yeah.
I just can't get it out now. And some other members of the team for sure as well. I'm fortunate to get to work with some super, super talented shooters and editors. So
Mhm.
right now we have, I usually shoot with Anish, who I've been shooting with for a long time. Connor usually shoots with Edwin, and Dave usually with Girish, and Edwin, Girish, and Anish are all three of them just incredible filmmakers. Like, they can produce these videos where people say, "Oh, this is this is like a 10-person team, and they're out
Right.
shooting for a week, and this is high production." You know, the end product is high production value, but it's usually one guy with a kit on his backpack, and that same guy again sitting down in the editing suite and producing the video. Just lucky to work with some very talented people.
Yeah. Yeah. It sounds like it's making it work however they make it work with whatever gear they have. And I mean, and not relying, but, utilizing your talent more. And it kind of lends itself to how you guys, it's like, it doesn't matter what you ride or how hack job it is. It's the fact that you're going out and riding and making an adventure out of it is really what
Oh yeah,
matters.
yeah. It's the same with camera gear. Like, in the early days, we couldn't afford a gimbal, so we would just carry the drone around because it had a gimbal on the bottom, and we
Yeah.
used that as the steady cam. And like, yeah, we've used often in gear reviews, like I'll put on a helmet and then we'll spin around to show all the angles of it. But it's just me in like a desk chair, just like spinning around like this.
Yeah.
We've used desk chairs for dollies, and yeah, we're as kind of hacky and run and gun with our camera kit as we are with our motorcycles usually.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't show, man. I've always appreciate the artistic, like scene setting, and just the lighting, the angles, the way you guys do it is always makes it a viewing pleasure in addition
Ah,
to
it's very kind.
consuming
Appreciate
the
it.
content. So you're not a tech guy, you like to go out into the mountains. Were you nervous about jumping in front of a camera at all, or was it second nature?
Um, I was nervous in the early videos for sure. The Canada's Motorcycle channel still exists on YouTube, so you can go on there and see the real first videos with me in them. And yeah, you can tell I'm super nervous.
Yeah.
My voice is tight. My body movements are weird. I don't know what to do with my hands. It's always the problem, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was nervous in the beginning for sure. It's always easier than speaking in public. Like occasionally now, I'll get the opportunity to talk at some event or whatever, and that I get really nervous for because talking in front of lots
Really?
of people is still really new to me. Because the video goes out to lots of people, but the process of shooting it is just like I'm just staring at a niche. My buddy of the last like 7, 8 years, and he doesn't
Right.
give a shit. He's usually not even paying attention because he's focusing on his focus, or he's focusing on the camera move or whatever. He's got his own stuff to
Yeah.
worry about. So that situation is not nerve wracking at all. That I can be myself and not be nervous, whatever. But talking in front of other people is always more nerve wracking. And
Really?
sometimes
That's
shoots are awkward. Like sometimes we'll be wanting to take a piece of camera in a very public place, or
yeah.
sometimes with press bikes, we'll get a bike, but the manufacturer will want one of their people to be there to make sure it's being used in a certain way. That's super awkward because then I've got to take a piece of camera saying, the suspension's kind of shit and I don't like this and this is overpriced and I'm having to deliver all this while this rep from the company is standing right back there. Like,
it's just my career, man. Don't worry about it.
Anger. I know, and I feel bad. I mean, I've got some friends involved in design and research and development and manufacturing. Like, I know how hard it is, and how much work, like thousands and thousands of man hours and years of work go into getting a product ready for public consumption. That's agreeable and priced well, and there's tons of effort put into them. And then me, Joe Blow influencer asshole, just hops on and talks about how I don't like this, that, and the other. And yeah, it sucks, man. I hate doing that in front of the people who have worked on it because it's a shitty thing to do. But at the same time, I want to push through it and do the awkward thing to be able to give good information and honest information to the fans. Like that's ultimately who we're beholden to, are the people who view our content. We owe them everything.
Yeah.
We wouldn't have this dream job if not for the people who are watching. So we'll push through the awkwardness to do it if it's worth it for the end viewer to
God,
hear.
I can't even imagine. It's like, the client's right there and they want to watch this happen. And it's like a $15,000-$20,000 motorcycle.
Yeah.
And it's trash, by the way.
Yeah, that's it. Like it's rough, but it's sometimes the reality. Like just because something took thousands of hours and millions of dollars to develop doesn't mean that it's going to be competitive against the 10 other products that are sitting there in the market.
Yeah.
You can do a very good job at getting a presentable, profitable, well-priced thing to market, and it can still be trash compared to the things that are out there because it's just very competitive, and that's the way that it is. But that's
a good point.
Really hard news to deliver in front of the people that have been working.
Yeah, that are. Yeah. Well, so going back to your videos, are there any videos that have either just you've shot, produced, edited, put together, and haven't made the cut, or like something that you've had to like scrap because of something else? I mean, I'm sure that there's only so many things you could say, but.
Oh no, I can talk about graveyarded videos all day long if you like. Yes, it happens. It doesn't happen too often, especially not anymore. Most of the things that we write and work on now are good for release, just because we've been doing it a long time. But the early days, we made more mistakes. We shot a video. It was based on The Room. Did you ever see The Room with Tommy Wiseau? It's like this iconic bad movie.
Oh, hi, Mark.
Yeah, exactly.
I had a nickel for every
wow.
time I heard that.
Yeah, exactly. So that movie was making a big splash at the time. So like, all right, we'll make a bad video themed video. So all the information will be there, but we'll shoot it badly and I'll present it badly. And
it'll be awkward.
It'll be awkward and we'll play off this thing. And we did it and we saw it all the way through to completion, fine cut and music, color grading, and it was done. And, and we were sitting there watching it. And I was just thinking, like, this is really bad. Like we did it too well. You know what I mean?
Are they kidding or yeah?
Yeah, exactly. It was not in the bad funny category. It was just in the bad category.
Yeah.
And so we graveyarded that. We lost a whole video once. We shot a whole video that was on an SD card that ended up being corrupted. And
oh god, nightmare.
Yeah, that sucks. So yeah, there's been a few things that have been shelved over the years. Yeah, it's happened for sure. But,
well, doing this over 10 years, what's the biggest thing you maybe think that you've learned about motorcycling or the motorcycle industry or the motorcycle world in your time of making videos for FortNine? Because I mean, you've covered damn near everything in every corner. I mean, there's still a ton left, but it feels like, I mean, you've touched almost every part of the motorcycle world. And so what's like the biggest thing that you think you've learned?
Oh, I think a lot of us have a tendency to take motorcycling far too seriously. Especially in North America, it's such a passion hobby that people obsess about which bike is going to be precisely right for me. Which piece of gear is just the exact thing and the exact best value that I'm after, and which ride, which route. You only have to go on ADV Rider, and you'll find hundreds and hundreds of pages about people agonizing over the details of this trip that maybe they're never going to do because they're just too busy talking about it,
Sure.
And that's not shit on planning, because planning is important, but I think I've really, for myself over the years, tried to jettison as much of that as possible. And now I just ride every day, and when I want to go do a trip, I just grab what I can in my backpack and I go do a trip. And some days I'm wearing good riding gear, and some days I'm not. Sometimes I'm wearing no riding gear, and sometimes the bike is fine. Some days it's shit. But if you're riding and you're having a good time, like, that's what it's all about. It was never really meant to be this super serious thing that I think a lot of us have made it. I think another thing I've learned is that motorcycles are super underused in North America.
Agreed.
Just nowadays, they're so reliable and they're so practical. And they're cheap to run and they're cheap to gas, and they can be very cheap to insure if you get the right ones. Like,
yeah.
And for most of us, we have climates where you could use a motorcycle all year. Like, there's definitely places in Canada where you can't, places in the States where you can't, but they could be our only vehicles for a lot of us.
It's possible. Yeah,
it's possible. And I think it's just such a good thing. It's affordable. It alleviates traffic congestion. That's one less car on the road. You don't need a garage, so like you can live tighter if you want to. It's so good for your mental health. Like every day in the morning, you're not just like going to work or like getting home. It's like an opportunity to ride and cut loose. So I think they're really underused. The other big thing that's just niggling is just that we're all getting so much older. Like the average age of motorcyclist, I think, was 27 in 1982, if I remember correctly, and now it's over 50.
Really?
Yeah. So we're really seeing like the young people are not getting into motorcycling at the same rate as they were before, and I think we're at the risk of our entire hobby like aging out at some point. Like you go to any dealership, and the cliche is these 16-year-old kids like ogling the latest Ninja. One day I'm going to buy. That doesn't exist anymore. That's a myth of a bygone era. You go into any dealership now, and it's usually 60-year-old men. And and I love those guys, and I'm so glad they're here, because if they weren't, we wouldn't have the industry. But we're not doing a good enough job at capturing the youth anymore, and getting them into riding. And I think most of that has to do with the micromobility options that we have. But we need to think seriously about how we can reclaim some of that market.
Yeah. So when you say micro mobility, you talking like scooters, e-bikes, that kind of stuff, or?
Yeah, I don't know what it's like in Illinois, you said, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't know what it's like there, but up here, big, massive growth for e-bicycles, e-scooters,
Yeah.
one wheels, those
Oh,
kind of
sure.
electric unicycles.
Yep.
Um, they're invariably coming in a box from China. They're very uncontrolled or unenforced or both. So
Yeah.
a lot of these vehicles will do like 120 kilometers an hour. Like I've been passed on the highway by kids on like scooters
Oh
and
my
one wheels
God.
and stuff. Yeah, they're super diabolical fast, and they're really practical. A few
Oh,
thousand
for
bucks,
sure.
you can carry it into your apartment, plug it in, and charge it. No
Mhm.
insurance, no registration, no license, no licensing fees. So all the young people, I understand the choice, right? If you're a kid and you want to get around independently and you want to go
Yeah.
fast and have some thrill and you don't have a lot of money, that is obviously the choice that you would make. You're not going to look at a motorcycle and say, okay, I'm going to study and get my license and pay license fees and get a registration. I'm going to pay for insurance. I'm going to buy a bike, and those are expensive. I'm going to find a place to keep it. I have to learn how to maintain it. Like, it's a lot of barriers to entry,
Yeah. It's a
to get
commitment.
into motorcycling, where you can pretty much get not the same fix, because I know how much more motorcycling can be, but you can get very close um, to the same initial fix from some of these electric micromobility options. And
Gotcha.
I think that's where our young motorcyclist market is going, instead of entering the fold. And I haven't seen a lot of manufacturers seriously look at capturing it.
Hmm.
Like, you look at electric motorcycles, and they're always these halo products, $30,000, big, traditional looking motorcycle machines. Um, yeah, I haven't seen anyone really trying to tempt that micromobility market yet, with a very affordable, very light, maybe even a foldable little motorcycle.
Sure.
There's ways it could be done, but I haven't really seen much. NIU is kind of close. I don't know how to say it. NIU, I'm not sure, but they
I'm
make
not sure.
these
Yeah.
electric scooters. They have kind of Vespa type things that are really actually quite nice, and they're fast, and it's pretty, not premium, but nice feeling package.
Yeah, for
And then they
sure.
have smaller and smaller versions that merge into the e-bike category, and so I think they're capturing some people up the chain there. But yeah, we're not doing a good enough job of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's a tough kind of market to crack. It's a tough puzzle to fit together, but hopefully, that changes in time. And I mean, if anybody says you're not doing enough, then they're flat out wrong. So
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we can always do more. I mean, looking at our own analytics, yeah, we could probably do more. We could do more to capture some young people. I think we should. One of my dreams is to do a video on the best kids motorcycle, but shoot it like a kids video. So like,
okay.
none of the bad words, bright colors, fast pacing, like make essentially a children's program,
Yeah, I was going to say Ryan, the
reviewing like
children's presenter. Yeah.
the PW50, and like I think KTM has a little electric, like motorcycles
Yeah.
for 6-7 year olds, but shoot it in a way that would be presentable to 6 or 7 year olds, so they can watch it and get stoked. So yeah, I've got some ideas that I want to do for
you. Well, I'll look forward to that one. That'll be a fun one.
Yeah.
But last question. I saw this in an interview a while ago that motorcyclists all have this feeling that like we really don't know what we're doing, and we're all still learning as we go along, which I love, because nobody knows what the hell they're doing.
Yeah, I think it's true.
But is there something that you've learned about motorcycling recently that maybe you're embarrassed to admit that it took you this long to find out?
We shot a short on this not too long ago, but I was reviewing a CB400 Ford.
Okay.
And I was reading, I think it was a 75 or 76, I can't remember. And I was reading a contemporary magazine write up about this thing. So
Okay.
from Cycle World back in the 70s or early 80s, whatever it was. And the writer was talking about the bike, and he said, and the steering locks in both directions, of course. That went on, and that kind of hit me. I was like, "What locks in both directions?"
Yeah, I was gonna say.
I'd never heard of that. I was like, "Am I stupid? Is this a thing that everyone knew?" So I go out into the our office, and Josh and Anish are sitting there, and I'm like, "Did you guys know that steering locks go in both directions?" And Josh was like, "Oh, they only go left." I was like, "Huh?
Yeah.
Well, this guy said they go right. I don't know." So we go down to the studio, and we have 6 or 7 bikes sitting there, and we try them out. And sure enough, like more than half of them lock left and lock right. And it's like, that's something that's staring me in the face for the last 20 years of my life, and it just never occurred to me to try locking the bars the other way. So little things like that jump out at me all the time. It's
Sure.
something that I've never heard of before. And yeah, there's always stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know that either, and I got 3 motorcycles downstairs that I got to go try out.
Hey,
on,
go
so.
check it out. Some of them do it, some don't. We had, I think, all the Hondas that we had here did it. We had a GS, a BMW that did it. I think there was a Yamaha that didn't. So yeah, we had a mixed bag, but lots of them seem to. Yeah,
love it, man. Well, Ryan, this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for the time, and can't wait to see the next video, man.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. It's been fun chatting with you. If you ever want to chat again, just let me know.
Love it. And just so in case somebody has been living under a rock and doesn't know who you are, where can they find you?
Yeah, FortNine, FortNine. If you type that in, go to the YouTube channel, you'd find all our stuff.
Love it. Thanks, Ryan.
All right, take care, buddy.